Hello YouTubers and welcome to another episode of the vlogs today. Oh, it's a wet day today, very stark comparison versus yesterday as I climb this very steep hill. But I've got Yam here. Yam doesn't like the rain either. Today, I don't know if you can remember the VO2 max from a week or two ago, part of a study, and so we've got the rest of the study today, where we do 70% of VO2 max for half an hour. So we're heading to the University of Bath to get a workout in on the bike again. Once I climb some more hilly hills and get my breath back. Because you have to actually fast for these tests. I don't like fasting. I like eating. Because remember, food is fuel. But there is a lot of science behind fasting. I've just never really been one for it. Now, it's time to get to the uni. Oh yeah. And we've made it to the University of Bath to finish off this study. And I'm all by myself. But today, as you can tell from the title, we're talking about training alone, training by yourself, because lately, or at least the last day or few days, Charlie's been pretty ill. My training partner, my coach, has been pretty ill. And so I've been all by myself. Yes. So it makes a difference to the training. And so we're going to go through, after we get this last bit of the study done, just go through some tips for training by yourself and how you might be able to do more of it. Oh yeah. And we've finished the half hour on the bicycle with some weight on it. Very, very sweaty. Now it's time to chill out, sit down for about an hour, get some blood taken. Oh yeah. And we've made it outside once again, post the bicycle, post waiting an hour, getting my bloods done. Hopefully we'll get the results. I mean, I've had the VO2 max results, but the results hopefully have helped with the study through doing a couple of more sessions. So there's a 50% bike and a 70% bike. Today's 70% bike was a bit harder than I anticipated, but it was about 70%. And this is one of the things, as it's starting to rain harder and harder, one of the things about training by yourself, if you're able, I know I say it quite often, if you're able to add a bit of variation, if you're able to do things a bit differently, and I'm not saying, okay, well, I row, so I'm going to go and bobsled. Just doing things a little bit differently, like interacting with different people that don't necessarily train with you, but maybe even once a week, once a month, doing something a bit different can really impact your motivation to keep going through the training that you may not necessarily enjoy as much. And that'll lead me on to another point later on, post food, because like I said, I fasted a little bit, I've had a lovely shake, but since I've fasted I'm quite hungry, so I'm going to get some food, because remember, food is fuel. And then we'll talk about different ways you can sort of keep on going with individual training as the camera's getting soaking. So let's get inside. And we've got some delicious food prepared to fuel up post little bit of session, post fasting. But like I mentioned, a little bit about enjoying the sessions, or trying to do sessions that you might not enjoy as much. I know it's simpler said than done, or easier said than done, but if you can find a way to enjoy as many sessions as possible, then no matter if you're by yourself or with someone else or with a team or whatever, then it's going to be that bit easier to complete the session. So what I've been trying to do is, so with the long distance mileage stuff, it's trying to think, okay, how do I enjoy this session? Well, it can really depend on you. So I've been putting on some Star Trek, some Netflix, loads of different channels to change things and make sure I'm not necessarily just sitting thinking, oh, I have to just get this done, but more a little bit of a distraction and thinking, well, this thing is going to get me somewhere else. And that leads me to the next point. If you can have a goal in mind of what you're doing, if you're training by yourself, it makes it that little bit easier to complete said training. Because when you're doing training by yourself, it can be really difficult and just harder to motivate yourself. But if you've got a goal in mind, so for me, pre-Paris, it was everything I'm doing is for Paris. Everything I'm doing is for Paris, the World Indoor Championships. All that hard ergs, like this is getting me faster for that 2K. So if you're training by yourself, you can think, okay, well, I've got an event, or I want to go this fast, or whatever it is in a few weeks or months, whatever it is. You can say, well, this is what I'm aiming for, this is why I'm doing it, and this is why I'm putting myself through what I'm putting myself through, if that makes sense. So enjoying as much as possible and trying to just sort of find a goal for yourself, which they both kind of tie into each other. If you can sort of find a goal, it means your enjoyment kind of can almost increase, and same thing, if you're enjoying it, the goal doesn't have to be as drastic really either. So they both can like feed off each other. But now it's time for me to fuel up, and then we'll talk a little bit about more about training by yourself. We've got one really important point that I think is how I'm able right now to do such high mileage. Not, like I said, not necessarily by myself completely here. Last couple of days, yes, because Charlie's been ill, but the last 2 months I've not been by myself, really been training with at least one other person. But like I said, a bit of illness means I'm by myself, hence the subject of the video, and I love the bit of repetition. I'm going to try and I'm continuing to try to limit that repetition, but apart from this, food is fuel, so let's fuel up. And we've made it back to the gym, post fueling up, post a little bit of recovery. So we're going to get to the gym for a lovely little montage, and then the most important thing I think to do with training by yourself. Montage time! And we've made it outside of the gym. A really good weight session there, and a thing that I didn't really talk about already, but it's related to training by yourself. As you saw, one of the PTs and I were just messing around a little bit, making sure obviously we're not getting injured or not sort of interfering with rest and interfering with the training itself, but having a little bit of fun and interacting with the people around you. Yes, you might be training by yourself, but for example, in this gym, I'm training by myself today, but there's PTs around, there's coaches around, there's people watching, there's people doing their own thing. So just had a little bit of chat today to Reese, who was showing me how it's done on the lat pull down. But it could just be a case of a little chat to someone you haven't ever spoken to and involving them in either your training or just sharing some experience together can make a big impact when you're training by yourself, and maybe that person becomes more than just a stranger you've spoken to at the gym. That was a point that I didn't really think I would bring up today, but it makes a lot of sense. Just as Reese and I were just messing around, made things just a little bit more fun, and again, pushing towards that enjoyment, and if you can enjoy it more, it makes everything that bit easier. But now, as always after the session, it's time to fuel up. And then we'll finally get on to that last point, the biggest point that I really believe affects training by yourself. Oh yeah. And we've made it back to the house. We've got Yam here. Come here, Yam. Oh, hello, buddy. Hello, Yam. We've got Yam here. Oh, yes. And we're finally talking about, yes, the biggest thing for training by yourself. And no, it isn't get yourself a Great Dane. Look over there. Where is that? It is a Great Dane. Oh. It's not get yourself a Great Dane. It is the intensity of your workouts. It is how you approach your workouts, not only in sort of the start or the beginning or the motivation to get going, but the way you do the workouts themselves. So imagine like I said earlier, when you're training by yourself, your motivation is much harder to generate. It's much harder to be motivated when you're training by yourself. So it's not a case of making it easier for yourself, but it's a case of why make it harder for yourself. So when you're training by yourself, it's easier to motivate yourself when you know you can complete the session, if that makes sense. So if I want to do 50k in a day like I did or do once a week now, I'm not going to want to do that by myself at, say I need to be in a band of my training zones, my heart rate training band. And that's about 125 to 135, a little bit lower, a little bit higher, give or take. I don't really want to sit at the 135 range. I want to be able to sit at the 125 range because I'll be getting a very, very similar training benefit, but actually be trying less hard, if that makes sense. And so on those days where you are training with a team, when you're training with other people, when you're really, really motivated, you can push on to that sort of 135 level. And I'm using these numbers just for me because I know those numbers. So they'll be different for you. But it's making sure that when the motivation is low, and generally, like I said, it's harder to have that when you're training by yourself. But the easier you can make the same workouts, the more likely you are to consistently do those workouts and consistently complete those workouts. And that's a big thing when you're training by yourself over a long period of time, especially. Is that okay? You might be great for 2 days. Like I'm fine. Charlie's ill. He'll be back in a few days once he's feeling better. But then when you don't have a training partner to train with, you don't have other people to train with over weeks at a time, then it's a question of getting through those sessions. So why do I want to go to the gym? Why do I want to go outside and do some sort of training session? Why do I want to go onto the water? Whatever it is for you, it's figuring out sort of why, and then if you make it that little bit easier, it's a little bit easier to convince yourself that you should be doing it because of that why, if that makes sense. But like I said, that's the biggest reason I've sort of realized over sort of the last couple of months of this training program that I've dropped the intensity down on the long mileage stuff, and it means that I don't finish it like, oh my goodness, it's supposed to be an easy workout and I'm struggling. I'm finishing the easy workouts and they're easy and I'm ready to go for the big workouts. And that's another point for the motivation too. If you start to see that sort of progression, if you're consistently making those easy workouts easy and those hard workouts hard, you see that progression, you see that stepping forward, and you just want to keep going. You're saying, I can keep going, I can do this. So hopefully all the tips today can help you, help the YAM squad. If you are training by yourself, if they can hopefully help you. And if you are training by yourself, let me know in the comments below if you have any other tips that can help you train and get the best out of yourself when either your training partner or your team are away. Maybe it's over sort of holidays when you're not in the team environment and you're training by yourself, or maybe you're in the same situation as me where your training partner is a bit ill, as we're still in the winter, so illness is still about, and just trying to make sure it's kept at bay. But maybe that's a whole nother video talking about illness prevention. And that will be it for today's episode of Jam Squad. Hopefully you did enjoy it, and hopefully again you can find these tips a little bit helpful. And as always, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button, and I've sent Yam to sleep. Hopefully I haven't sent you to sleep.